A sizzling warm welcome to all you bonfire lighters out there. This is indeed part 2 of the repainting series for the main board game for Dark Souls. And we're still running the giveaway, so be sure to stick around to the end of the video to find out how to enter. But for now, we're jumping up on the roof to slap up a couple gargoyles.
And engage in jolly cooperation.
So this is the infamous Bell Gargoyle boss from Dark Souls 1 that was pretty much ganked up for Dark Souls 2 in the Belfry Lunar area. But I decided to go with the colour palette of Dark Souls 1 as that is the OG. I think this is one of the best designed models that has come within the board game set, and I think they've really nailed all the little details over it. Now, this is the first gargoyle that I did last year. For a beginner back then, it's not the worst paint job I've ever done, and I think the level of detail on the model did help the paint job. But as you can see for the armor and the shield and the weapon, I basically just used lead belcher with a load of Nuln Oil spread all over it like I did in all the other ones. And I tried dry brushing on some different tones on the skin. As you can see, there are different browns with some Seraphim Sepia dumped all over it on the wings. The base is actually quite cool, and I'm kind of proud how that came off for how early on I did it. I printed off these little building terrain parts for it, and I think it came out quite cool. Although I think roof tiles would have been more appropriate for the authenticity of it. But aside from that, let's get it primed. Jobbed. Now, for the same method as I've done with Ornstein and Smaug, I'm just doing some zenithal highlighting to the gargoyle to create the light source. It's not a mandatory step, and you can just jump straight in painting the models straight from priming, but this is a technique I want to keep trying to improve on. So this is the outcome of the highlighting job. And I'm going to start off by painting the body, and I'll be starting off with some of the Garagax Sewer contrast paint, which is a sort of mid-brown tone. And it is more than okay to forego an airbrush for this and just use paint brushes for it, but this is a relatively new airbrush and I kind of want to try and get as much mileage and as much use with it as I can. Next, I'm just adding some darker tones with the Rattling Grime contrast paint, which is a darker tone than the previous sewer brown, and with this I'm just targeting the darker shadowy areas of the model that's going to require the most shading. For some brighter tones of highlights, I'm then just spraying on some Mournfang Brown to areas of the wing with a sort of staggered bounce effect, leaving gaps between the lighter parts, and also just highlighting the exterior parts of the main body. To further enhance the highlights, I'm just adding in some Moorcast Bone and making even smaller areas within the light brown to really make some of the lighter tone pop. For the metallics, I'm going to be making a sort of turquoisey tone for the base coat, which is kind of closer to the actual game model than just using a metallic shade. So for this colour, I'm just going to mix together equal parts of Moot Green and Lothan Blue onto a wet palette. Now this should make quite a bright base coat colour, and it will stand out quite nicely against the darker tones of the body. And I'm just starting off with the pauldrons. Is that the right word? I think it's pauldrons. Anyway, I'm just doing these parts so you can see the method that I'm trying out. And on top of this base coat, I'm mixing some dark brown colour into the base turquoise colour to create some darker tones, which I'm going to apply in streaks to make it look like some rough scrape texture on the armour. And I'm just going to build up different strokes and scatter them across these shoulder pads, focusing on the edges and building them inwards. Then I'll just do the exact same thing, but instead of brown, I'll mix in some white tones into the turquoise mix to create a highlight shade that we can use to create lighter strokes. And these little highlights are going to mainly be on the ridges and in the center of each lip, as you can see here. That should at least give some interest to the armor. Then it's just a case of doing this exact same thing to the helmet, to the shield, the halberd, and the rest of the armor around the body. You know when you go and ring the bell after you beat the gargoyles and you hear that same bell ring throughout the game? This is probably common knowledge these days, but I'll say it in case anyone's new to it. But that bell ring you hear is actually other players ringing the bell. And that is such a cool mechanic in the game, because it's kind of tying in the idea that, time's repeating itself in a cycle in the world of Dark Souls, and it's other chosen undead throughout different times trying to link the first flame. And I love anything time travel-y that suggests time isn't linear and that it actually flows in a circle. Fromsoftware games do this a lot, and it's such a cool concept. If you haven't already, I would suggest watching Dark on Netflix, the German drama one. Do subs, not dubs, trust me. It's all about this type of thing. It's awesome. Anyway, enough about time travel. The next part I'm doing on this Winged Wander is the teeth. And for this, I'm just doing a base coat of Moorcast bone, but any kind of bone-coloured paint would do the trick. And with the same colour but very thinned out, I'm also applying a couple of layers of it to the feathers on the wings. Now, with a cheap brush that's just lying around, I'm going to add some of this technical Typhus Corrosion, which basically replicates grime, but it destroys your brushes, so always just use cheap crap ones that you have lying around. Then I'm just dabbing little bits of it across the metal parts on the model. Now time for Mama's famous recipe. Drool, 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 baby. I'm not going to use fishing wire for this one. I'm just going to drip it onto the jaw. So with some UV resin and a UV torch, I'm just going to drop some resin drip by drip onto the jaw and let it run down and try and catch it with the UV light as it's falling to try and generate those falling strands. Once that's done, I'm then thinning out some Agrax Earthshade. I'm just going to use it as a wash over the wings to try bring it all together and let it settle in all the little creases on the wings. And with that done, that's about it for this one. I'm just going to tidy up around it, and we'll take a look at the difference between this one to the one that I did a year ago. So here is the original one. You can see it's really shiny from the amount of shader I slapped on, and the tones are a bit dull, but the wing colour is actually kind of alright with how bright it is against the rest of the body, and I do think the base is pretty cool for it as well. Now the new one, the armour is closer to the actual game model, the body is brighter and has a bit more depth to it. I'm not going to base these models for this set because, you need these little cross lines on the base to actually use these bosses on the board game, so, I'll leave basing up to whoever wins the giveaway. Which brings me sweetly onto my final point. This is part 2 of the giveaway. As explained in part 1 last week, on Sundays I'll be releasing a new video as part of this repainting series. And by the end of the series, we will have a fully painted collection of the main board game set. This is the prize, this exact and complete Dark Souls board game painted by me, and to enter all you have to do is make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment below answering this week's question. I will be picking a winner from comments across all the videos in this repainting series, so the more videos you comment on, the more chance you have to win. So last week I asked you to comment your favourite Fromsoftware game, and this week we'll narrow it down a bit and I want you to comment below your favourite boss from all of FromSoft. And with that, as ever gang, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop a like it's hot, and hit the subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow and reach new people, and I want to keep bringing you bigger and better videos each week. Also, click that bell to turn on notifications while you're at it so you get updated the moment a new video drops, if you're so inclined. Thank you for spending your precious minutes with me, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out, and don't you dare go hollow.